All right, y'all. Before we get to the latest episode of the Banquet Hall podcast, I just wanted to talk to you all a little bit about another sponsor of the pod. I have the shirt on, I have the board game in hand. That's right, we're talking about Play Black Wall Street, the board game. Play Black Wall Street has the mission of educating families on the legacy and ideals of Black Wall Street in a fun way through creative and educational experiences. And the best part is you can have Play Black Wall Street, the board game, in your own hands. Go ahead and head to the link in the description. You can use my link to get 10% off the second edition of Play Black Wall Street, the board game. Just go to playblackwallstreet.com/banquet hall podcast. That's playblackwallstreet.com/banquet hall podcast. And once y'all get y'all skills up in the game, holla at me and I'll be happy to learn a little bit about Black Wall Street with y'all. Now let's get to the episode. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Banquet Hall podcast. New listeners or listeners who are so stubborn you still haven't followed the podcast yet, please follow the pod at Banquet Hall Pod. Leave a 5-star rating, like, subscribe, whatever you can do to support the podcast. Also, make sure that you take time right now, hit pause, tell a friend to also hop on a podcast and give it a listen. And we're ready to get a show started. I'm blessed to be joined with another member of the UCSD Trident family, the one, the only Irene. Irene, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Irene is joining us from the not so cold state of Arizona, blazing in this summer heat. So hopefully you're able to stay cool throughout this podcast episode. And we bring the heat through our words. So we'll do it that way.
Agreed. I am not going outside.
Yeah, if I would have started this podcast interview and you were standing outside in 100+ degree weather, I would have concerns.
Right. No, literally the fan's been running the whole day. The AC is always on. So my electric bill, honestly, is probably going to be a lot, but I don't even care. So
Hey, that's what it's like over summer. I mean, I live in San Diego, and even here, like, it's been hotter than it typically would be over summer. And I feel like summer is a period where I'm like, you know what? I don't even care what the electricity bill says. I'm staying cool.
yeah, right? I'm telling you.
But I always like to start this podcast with asking where folks are from and what they kind of took away from where they grew up. So why don't you share with our listeners, where are you from originally?
Yeah, so I am from Escondido, California. So some people, they're like this is a controversial topic because I'm from San Diego. So Escondido, it's in North County, San Diego. But I did grow up there. So I was born in San Diego City. And then when I was 8, I moved up to Escondido. But that is just honestly where my family resides still to this day. So my parents are immigrants actually, and like when they moved here, they moved right to San Diego. So I think it's cool that we've like stayed in the same area since all these years of my life. So it's just until like 2 years ago is when I actually moved to Arizona. But yeah, home is San Diego. So Escondido I do represent. So
Hey, you're the only person on this podcast right now. So if you want to claim Escondido as just being from San Diego, then that's what it is. I mean, it's San Diego County at the end of the day. So
I'm saying yes. And people are like, no, that's not right. And I was like, well, nobody knows what Escondido is. So I'm gonna say I'm from San Diego. And out here it's been serving me well. So that's what
I feel like I understand both sides to it, though, because I definitely, being from the city of Los Angeles, and people will claim whatever like city is remotely close to LA County as LA. So I understand some of it, but at the same time, we don't want to erase your San
right.
Diego heritage.
Exactly. I was like, we need exposure too. So
But you're putting Escondido on the map, and that's what matters. Where'd your family immigrate from?
so they're from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it's like the country right in the center, right in the heart of Africa. So they're from like their eastern side. But yeah, they immigrated like obviously before I was born. So it's been a while. So they've been here for I don't know, like almost 30 years upcoming. So because I'm 26. So yeah, but that's where they're from. And it's been really cool to kind of just, I feel like, have that same level of understanding of like being Congolese, but also being American. So I'm like in a blended culture because of that. So
And have you ever been?
I actually have, yeah. So when I was 10 years old, I went with my mom. It was my first time going, and I've always been like, I want to go to Congo. I want to go to Congo, just to kind of see like where my family's from. So I was pretty young, but I still remember like a lot of my experience. So I went there, and so they're from so Kinshasa is the capital, but that's like the opposite side. So it was cool because we got to fly to Burundi, which is like a small country right next to Congo. So I got to go there, and then we drove the board like across the border, and then we went to Kiliba, like that's where my family's from. So I was there for 1 month,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so it was an experience. I feel like if I was there for longer, I would have like picked up the language more, which would have been really cool because then I would have been coming back fluent, but here I am. But all my family lives there actually. So it was super cool. Like I met my grandparents for the first time, met all my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and it was just such a celebration of joy. Like I was like, nobody even knew who I was. I mean, they knew I was like my mom's daughter, but like after that, I just felt so much love, and it was just amazing. So I haven't been back as an adult, but I would love to go back one day. Mhm.
I think that would be amazing for you to go back as an adult too. I think especially after having gone through like the college experience in America, learning a lot about like American like Black culture, learning about like other African cultures as well. But just hearing you talk about like meeting your grandparents for the first time, like I can't imagine like what that might be like, because I think we take for granted like proximity to some of our elders in our families, and I just can't even imagine what that would be like if I went like several years of my life without meeting my grandparents. Do you remember what that moment was like for you? Like I know you said you felt a lot of love, but do you remember
Yeah,
that moment?
I do. So I specifically remember meeting my grandma from my mom's side, so my mom's mom. So we came up there, and we were like in this, just a car, like just driving. And I think I was with one of my uncles, so my mom's like older brother. And we got there, and I remember like my mom seeing all her like siblings and family members for the first time. Like they were like, like just shouting and with like so much joy. So they were like and stuff. And then they started like slapping her in the back. And I was like, why are they slapping her in the back? What's going on here? But that was just like their way to show how excited they were. And they were like trying to pick each other up. And like my mom was crying, everybody's crying. And then I saw my grandma. And at the time, my grandma, she's older, and, her health is not like as great as it can be. So she has like cumbersome knees and stuff. But she came from the house, and like it took her some time to kind of walk down the stairs, but she literally lifted me up and like carried me to the house. And everybody's like, no, put her down. Like, you're kind of fragile. But she was just so happy to see me. And
Uh,
it was just like, that was just like the first memory like of my grandma that I've ever had. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And I also remember seeing her, I was like, this is my mom. Like, she looks exactly like my mom, except she's just older. So I was like, mommy, like, I didn't really realize grandma looks exactly like you. Like, that's your twin. So it was just so beautiful. Like, everybody's just dancing and, trying to give us like for chickens is like really common to like give a chicken or goat even. So, or
mhm.
just like some simple gifts like soda or like some cash. So it just felt like a party. And it was just like, I don't know, coming to America, but like coming to like Uvita. Like that's kind of what it was. So it was really nice. And then on my dad's side, like we went to go to his village. So I think it was like maybe like a week after or something, because they are a little bit far apart. But I just remember going to meet my grandparents on my dad's side for the first time. And it was so beautiful. Like the same thing, like just a lot of love, a lot of crying, a lot of yelling. They were singing, and like it was just so beautiful. And like I sat like in the middle between like my grandparents, and there was a language barrier because I'm not fluent in my parents' like native tongue, but it's still like I can tell that they're saying good things to me and like really
Mm,
kind of uplifting things. And sometimes my mom would like translate, but I also didn't want to like burden her with doing that.
yeah.
She's like, I'm not here for you. I'm here for you guys. So, but it was a beautiful moment, honestly. So yeah, it was just so amazing. And I was like, this is gonna be a lot of fun. So yeah, but that was like the only time I've seen my grandparents in real life. So yeah.
Wow. Wow, that was a very heartwarming story. Thank you for sharing that with me as well as our listeners. I think that just hearing about the different cultures across the continent of Africa, and just what these little moments can mean for a family and for a heritage. Because, as you well know, and most of our listeners know, I think too often when the media or society talks about Africa, it's just like, oh, Africa. And it's just like
Right.
this very monolithic
Yeah.
Africa. So I think whenever we have an opportunity to have guests on the podcast who have roots in the continent, or have direct roots in the continent, or have family still living there, I think it's so powerful just to be able to hear those stories. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your family story with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking. I know I feel like I haven't thought like so much about it in a long time, or thought really hard about it. So I know I remember like writing about like my personal, I think it was my personal statement for coming into college or grad school, one of those. But I was just talking about, like my grandma and just kind of the inspiration and stuff. But I haven't retold the story since. So mhm.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy you chose this podcast to tell that story. And speaking of college, wanted to give the listeners a little bit about how we crossed paths. Obviously, I already kind of spoiled it that you went to UC San Diego. But do you remember when we first crossed paths, or what that first impression was like?
I do, like, saliently. So, I remember, I think I was a senior in high school, so I did the overnight program, and, like, the BSU overnight, I think it was 2 days? 3 days? I can't remember, but a couple
3 days,
days.
2 nights.
There you go, thank you, exactly. I was like, I feel like 2 days, like, was a little too short, but it wasn't there for so long, but I remember doing the overnight program, so BSU or the BRC like teaming up, they were able to just gather Black students from like San Diego area and other parts just to kind of showcase the school. So I remember you being involved. I don't know exactly what your title was, if you're just like a volunteer or whatnot, but you were just so nice. Like you were talking to everybody because I was super nervous. I was like, oh God, I'm going to this school. I'm not gonna have any friends. Like, who are these people? But you were just very kind and like forthcoming and really just trying to get to know like who I was and like all these other students. And I think I remember we took a photo like on library or no, Price Center, like stairs or stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like you're like gathering people to come take a photo and everything. I was like, all right, Kyler, I'll do so. But that was like my first interaction with you. So just like the overnight program. And I was like, well, if there's a lot of friendly faces like this, I think I could do this school. And then I remember coming back because I did end up choosing
Yeah.
UCSD. And you were still there. And I was like, wow, like and I think around this time you might have worked for the BRC because I was it was my first year. So I don't know if you were already working for the BRC or just like
Hmm.
having involved, but I think you're like asking like, am I gonna come through to like the BSU meeting and just all these Black events coming through. So I was like, I mean, I guess like I know who you are. So it's not gonna be super, super awkward, hopefully. And you weren't a stranger, so I really appreciated that because you could have just been like, nah, like I don't remember her. But that was my first interaction. So just kind of like your face was like constantly there, like when it came to like just events going on, like the Black community when I was first matriculating to UCSD. Mhm.
Wow. You have a good memory. Um,
So you're like,
it's
I don't
crazy because I feel like that's a story that I hear from a number of different people who went to UC San Diego. I feel like a lot of them. Ooh, hold on a second, my microphone changed. It's all good. But I feel like a lot of people at UCSD, especially those that went to the overnight program, when I talked to them about like, oh, like when did we first cross paths? A lot of them were like, oh yeah, you were so friendly at overnight. I'm like, was I really that friendly? Like, I don't know. I feel like in the moment, I just see it as like, oh, I'm doing this job. Like the mission is to make these students feel welcome, to get them to choose UCSD. So I guess I was doing a good job. So I appreciate that
because I
affirmation.
chose UCSD. I was between UCSD and another school, and like UCSD's overnight was the first one that I did. And I went to this other school's overnight program in LA. It was called like multicultural night or something. I don't even know. But I was like, red flag statement. And literally, like, I'm not gonna name the school, of course, but it
Yeah.
was a small liberal arts school in LA. And the only reason why I was considering that school was because they offered me a really, really nice financial aid packet. Like, I would have been like pretty much debt free. So I
Hmm.
was like, that's very enticing. But like the overnight program was not very diverse at all. Like they had geographic diversity, which, to each their own in terms of that. But I was like, where are the Black people? You know what I mean? And then like it was not a good experience overall. I felt very out of my comfort zone. But when I went to the overnight program at UCSD, I was like, the Black people, we're 2%. But I was like, if I am gonna come here, at least I know there's like a solid group of Black people that I can rely on, even if we are like a super small minority. So those are the two schools I was choosing. And then UCSD, you did your job because I came. So
UCSD, I'll take my check in the mail. But no, I think that just hearing those stories is always affirming because I think a lot of the guests on this podcast have talked about the community aspect of UCSD and just what that has meant for their college experience. And like you mentioned, at the time you went, it was around 2%. And now UCSD is just over, I think, around 3% Black. And it's like, it's still such a small number, but I think for those of us who were there when it was under 2%, it's like, damn, like y'all at 3, that's crazy.
Right, it multiplied by 2.
Yeah, like it's just seeing the communal aspect is just phenomenal. So why don't you talk a little bit about what community you did find at UCSD and kind of that UCSD experience? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I feel like I found like multiple communities, which I'm really thankful for because every community really helped like shape me to who I am today. And I'll say like, UCSD has its qualms, of course, but like I will say I am happy I went there because of the communities that I did find. So when I first got there, I was already familiar with the Black community through overnight programs. So, being a part of like BSU, going to the BRC, just like knowing that there's Black students around, I was really able to just get into that community. But then when I was it was my first year. So like the summer before my first year, I did the summer bridge program. So basically it's like I think it was 5 weeks when I did it or whatnot. So, transition program for like underrepresented students to like get classes, but also just build like, on their personal identity, professional identity, all the fun stuff. So I think you were actually an ATC, I think.
What year did you do bridge?
2015.
Yeah, I was ATC then.
Yeah, you were. Yeah. So that's all. I was like, oh my gosh, you're back. So yeah, so I was like, Kyler's everywhere. So at least I have a friend there. But yeah, so I did summer bridge, and honestly, it was like one of the best experiences for me, just to kind of like maybe not the academic side, like in terms of one of the classes was super eye-opening. The other one I was like, whatever. But but just in terms of just like my suite and like coming into who I am and just being exposed to so many different people, so many different stories, like I feel like I was kind of in a bubble when I was growing up. So then here I was like, wow, people just go through so many things, but like look at them now. Look, they're here and they're just gonna overcome so much and they're gonna make a change in the world. So it's just very inspiring. So I really appreciated like my summer bridge community, and then I was able to like be involved, I think, up until I graduated. So that was another community that I found. And then my ASA, which is the African Student Association, I was like heavily involved in that. So that was super pivotal for me, like my first year through until I graduated as well. Because I think I was more involved actually with ASA than I was the BSU my first year, just because I really felt like that's where I was most comfortable. So I had a lot of people who I met that were also like me, like first generation American. They are kind of in this like middle stage of like, I'm not so much this, I'm not so much this, I'm a blend of the two. So I met a lot of different like students who identified as African in like different parts and stuff. And it was just so cool to just be around them. So I really cherished that community as well. So I would say like those are like my 3 main communities that I was a part of. And then, like, I mean, my major wasn't really community. Like I liked my major. I thought it was cool and the people were super supportive, but I don't really think I was like going to them like that. But yeah.
And what major did you major in at UCSD?
Human development. I think now it's called like human developmental sciences. Yeah, so HDS now. But I majored in that, and then I minored in education studies. So I actually came though as a psychology major because I was like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do, because I wanted to be a pediatrician like growing up and stuff. But then I found like occupational therapy senior year. I was like, I'm gonna go for it. So then I felt like psychology was, more complementary than like bio. And I was like, what am I gonna do with a bio degree? For me, not to knock it, but for me personally, I was like, what am I gonna do with a bio degree?
And
So
I think that's so interesting to hear, because I feel like stereotypically you hear people like, oh, what are you going to do with a human development degree, or what are you going to do with a psychology degree? But to hear you say, like, what are you going to do with a biology degree, and you choosing something that you are more interested in, I think that's very powerful. And human development is probably like one of the main pillars of my UCSD experience, because I took HDP 1, Intro to Human Development, and I
mhm.
just fell in love with the concept of learning about like how humans developed. I never even thought that you could study something like that, like how we develop, what types of things like affect our growth. And that's how I ended up in cognitive science. So that's really cool that human development was that calling for you.
Yeah, no, that's cool that you also have exposure to that class, because I feel like a lot of different majors took that class too, because I wasn't with just human development majors. I think I was with, I mean, I don't know if it classified for psychology, I can't remember, but there's a couple majors too that were taking that. So that's cool that there is an overlap as well. I really liked it, and I was like, yeah, I chose a good one. So
Definitely. And as you mentioned, senior year, you started getting interested in occupational therapy. Before we get into the grad program that you're currently in, one of the things that I realized as I like continue to do this podcast is that this podcast has also served as a way to bridge the gap between the people in my life that went to college and are experienced with college, and those who may not have as much of a background in the collegiate environment. And so I really want to be able to take the opportunity to educate people on just the different things that are out there for people to pursue. So, in a general sense, or at least in your own words, what is occupational therapy?
yes, this is the question that sometimes I'm like, I don't know. No, just kidding. But so occupational therapy, it's a health science curriculum or program, what you want to call it. So we do work like in the medical field, but it's very holistic, it's very client-centered. And basically the crux of it is it's a quote that I'm gonna quote. It was like, what matters most to you? And that was from like the American Occupational Therapy Association website. And I wrote about that in my personal statement. But if you look at that, we look at different aspects of occupation. So things that you need to do, things that you want to do, things that are meaningful to you, and how do we rehabilitate you or modify your environment to get you back to where you want to be so that you can be as independent and as functional as possible. So we're super diverse in the fact that you can go in different settings. So for example, I actually just finished one of my rotations in an outpatient pediatric clinic. So I was working with kiddos. A lot of them had like developmental disabilities, some had more physical disabilities, but I really help with like their occupations. So that could be, like being a student. So what does it mean to be a student? You need to have social skills. You need to be able to practice some self-care. So like dressing so that you are able to go ahead and, like be, so like when you're going to recess, like you have like the clothes you need to wear. Or we worked a lot on just like visual motor skills, and we did a lot of handwriting, all of that stuff. So these are occupations that are important at this age for children to accomplish. But then I'm going to hospital like next month. So with that, I'll be helping people in an adult setting, who might not necessarily be able to like go toileting or shower themselves, groom themselves, or even just do things that make them functional and meaningful. So as an OT, we're really there to kind of help, not do it for them, but teach them how to regain the skill that they might have lost. Or if, they can't regain that skill, they're able to modify their environment or just like their personhood, their occupation, so that they can be as successful doing it. So it's super holistic because, we don't just treat what we think, the person needs. Like we treat based off of what the person needs, and then we kind of come up with a plan that's collaborative so that we're able to like rehabilitate them through like those daily like therapeutic use of activity. So that's what OT is in a nutshell. So yeah, you can go in any settings. Like it could be community based, more non-traditional. You can go into academia, which I'm kind of looking into more non-traditional like later down in my line of work. But right now I'm just trying to survive and graduate. So mhm.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for that very thorough description of it, because honestly, as I was preparing for this podcast, and I was thinking like, I was like, do I even know what OT is? Because I feel like I've just being around like so many different people with so many different majors, working in admissions and talking to students about majors they're interested in. I've heard OT so much, and today was the first day where I'm like, wait, what? What am I even talking about here? So thank you for that. I learned a lot just in you saying that, and I know our listeners will appreciate just that insight as well. And I know that you mentioned just a lot of the different spaces you can get into with OT. And on your website, which we'll get into a little bit later, you mentioned that you're passionate about transforming the healthcare system in a way that promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion for marginalized populations. So obviously, you're still in the midst of your grad program, but why don't you talk a little bit about why you chose this grad program and what you're hoping to gain out of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually, so the school that I go to is in Mesa, Arizona. And when I was first applying, just in general, like looking at schools, I actually came across this school from UCSD. So we have, I think at UCSD every year they did like the health sciences fair. So from all these different programs come out, like students are who are their interests, like what are they interested in essentially. So I saw a representative and she was a Black lady. So I was like, who is she? Like I had to like go up to her, and she was from my school. And my school has like multiple campuses now that they're developing. So I think she was from the other campus because I've never seen her here, but I don't know.
Hmm.
But she was so nice. She was super cool, super chill. And I think what stood out like was that their mission was really to work with like underserved communities, whole person care, very holistic, because it is like an osteopathic medical school. And then we have other health professions that like align with that mission. And then again, just looking at opportunities to be working with other professions. So it's very interdisciplinary too, because in the healthcare system, we're going to be working with so many different professions, and we need to work as a team to help our clients as much as we can. So that really stood out to me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply here. So I was in Arizona. I was like, I don't know anything about Arizona. I just know it's really hot, but it's only a couple of years. How hot can it really be? And it is really hot, but I'm not gonna let that deter me from getting my education. So I chose this school because of like the mission statement and just like the interactions that I had with that particular representative at the time. So it's been a pretty cool process. I will say school is really hard. Like it's hard because I don't even know if it's the content that's hard. Like I had anatomy, neuro, like those classes were insane. But everything else I feel like is manageable, but it's hard because of all of the information you need to know at one time,
Mm.
and you need to study it, and time management is like so hard. So, and it's really easy to get burnt out if you're not taking care of yourself, which I know I was burnt out so many times throughout the program. I think now I'm a little bit less burnt out because I've had like a break, and my schedule this time around it's a little bit more chill, it's more independent. But that's kind of why like I chose this school, because of the opportunities that I felt that I could really advance like what I want to do to like transform healthcare. And if the mission statement aligns with that, and I can see that reflected through like the staff, the classes, all of that, then I'm like, okay, I'm like setting myself up for success professionally and personally too. So hope that answered your question. I don't know if there is another part of that, but
Oh no, absolutely. And I really appreciate that answer too, because I think when people talk about why they're doing what they're doing, I think that just hearing people talk about their why can be really impactful for a lot of people. I think, especially any listeners who might be thinking about doing a grad program or something further down the line, because so often we talk about going to grad school or going to further your education. And a lot of the like questions end up being like, why should I? Or how do I know when a program is right for me? So I think just hearing you talk through that process is very important. And I also want to really highlight the importance of representation of that too, because if a Black person wasn't at that career fair or wasn't able to be a visible person in the space for you, who knows if you might have chosen the school or not. And just another pillar of representation being important.
Mhm. No, that's so true. And I mean, like, I'm gonna just be honest, my program is not diverse, like as much as I thought it would be. But I think that they are working to be more diverse. And I have been seeing more Black faces and even represented, especially in faculty. And I think that's really powerful, and that shows itself there. So I'm like continuing to do that is going to be so important so that prospective students can come to AT, or well, AT still is the school I go to. So, but yeah, so they can come there and they're just like, oh my gosh, like, wow, there's another Black figure. Like, I can do this, especially in OT. Like, I think we're about 5% of the population, Black people. So it's so, so small, and then that's not even to account for like gender differences or just like where the person is socioeconomically, all of that stuff, so the different intersections of identities. So I'm just like, I want to be in this field, obviously to help people, but like I also feel like I'm a representative of this field too. And it's a double-edged sword because we didn't ask for this, but like we are in this position to almost pave the way for other people that look like us so they can feel comfortable being in this space. Mhm.
Absolutely. Before we get into your blog, I wanted to give us some space to be able to talk about some of your passions and interests and hobbies. And so, starting with photography, on your website, you claim that you are an amateur photographer. I went ahead and looked at some of your photos. I would say this goes a little bit beyond amateur. I would say you're a photographer. We don't have to put the amateur on it, but what has photography given you, or what do you take from like being able to take pictures of people?
Yeah, so actually I really into photography. Like 2016 is when I brought my camera. So I have a cute Canon camera, T6i, shout out. But I wanted to just take pictures, of people, of just record like my environment and everything that I'm doing in college. So, and also I love photos. Like I love when people take pictures of me and, I post on Instagram. I'm trying to be more frequent on posting on Instagram because before I feel like I was on top of it and then I kind of fell off because of school. But it's been a way that I could just kind of express myself creatively. So especially like portraits of people, like I'm not really like into taking pictures of plants or really mountains or anything like that. I don't have the same like, I don't know, desire to capture that. But with people, I love their facial expressions. I just love like what the emotions that they can convey and like what story they're telling through their faces or through like their body positions or the way that they pose, what they're looking at, all of that. So I'm gonna be honest, I really did fall off. Like I was hitting hard like during the pandemic. Like I had Photoshop on my laptop and I was out here scheduling photo shoots and I was actually getting paid. People were paying me. I photographed a wedding, which was really fun. And now I look back, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had this other equipment. But it was a small wedding and they knew that I was an amateur. So it worked out, but I've been able to build a portfolio, like see what my page is at website. But since I started grad school, I have not picked up my camera that much. So it is something that I hope to get back into because I really was again able to just capture like people's stories and like their voices, but through a visual expression that I feel like sometimes we can't necessarily tell what they're thinking or what like they're going through that. So I miss photography. I really love it and I've always been into it. But I just haven't been practicing. So that's why amateur will stay there because I had not developed my skill, but I was literally, especially like during the pandemic, I was on YouTube, like Googling like all these different things and like different lenses to like buy, different cameras. So I'd like to elevate my camera, maybe get a film camera. I think
Mm.
if I get this, then it'll force me to like use it more. So that's my rationale right now. But
Yeah, we're gonna manifest that once grad school is over and you have just more capacity to like develop your interest and return to some of those passions that you'll get right back to it. I think that grad school can't be understated how difficult it can be, and I think we owe ourselves as much grace as possible when we're not able to do the things that we typically were doing. Like when I was in grad school, there's a lot of things that I was like, dang, like I haven't done this in a while. And it's just because grad school takes us so much mental capacity. So we're going to manifest that once grad school is over, you're going to get that camera that you want and get right back to it.
yes, thank you. I am going to manifest that. I'm going to put that on my grad present. Buy me this camera.
Hey, got to ask for what we want for sure. Another one of your hobbies and interests that you have on your website is traveling. And so, my question with regards to traveling, one is where's somewhere that you really want to travel to, and as well as what are some travel stories or some interesting places that you've been that you really enjoyed?
Yeah. So in terms of wanting to travel, honestly, I'm just kind of down to go everywhere. Like I I would love ideally like in a perfect world to like take a year off and just like go travel the world. So
Mm,
cover like every continent. I think Thailand would be amazing. I think it'd be cool just to go to other places in Africa that I wasn't able to go to. Um literally everywhere. I want to go to Namibia. I think that would be really cool. I saw like a documentary and it looks beautiful. So I'm trying to go there one day. So hopefully if I have some money, maybe I'll use my loan money to like treat myself when I graduate, to just go, not for a year, but like, I don't know, a couple weeks or whatnot, just to a place that I've been wanting to go. So, but in terms of traveling, like my experiences, I went to Ghana. So that's like my most salient, I think, travel experience as an adult. And people know me, they know. We had this card one time we were playing a game and they're like, choose a friend that always talks about studying abroad and their experience abroad. And I was that friend. And I was like, I'm sorry, but it was great. Like it was so transformative. So I went to Ghana fall 2018. So it was my last semester of UCSD. And then I came back and I was done with school. So it was super nice to just kind of finish it off like that. But I was there for 4 months and it was literally like one of the best times of my entire life, because I learned so much about myself, just like who I am as a Black person in like a different community and different environment, but also who I am, being African as well, having those roots. And then also so much about like Ghanaian culture. I met so many friends from Ghana that I still have today that I keep up with, which is super nice. And I just feel like it's a different community that I will always have such a bond with, no matter like how far we are, no matter how long we don't talk. So it was just beautiful. Like we did so many cool things, and I was able to do a lot of like travels and excursions within that region, going to different parts of Ghana, also doing an internship there and working with people with disabilities. So that also kind of inspired like why I want to be an OT even more. So that was a really cool experience. And then I went to Cabo, Mexico, like months before the pandemic. So I'm glad I got to travel one more time, but no, I was just like on the beach. We went for 10 days. So it was me and my study abroad friends. And it's cool because again, now we're travel buddies. So I was like, okay, like I know how you work in a different setting. So I trust you with my travel. So we were there for 10 days and Cabo was kind of expensive, but we were on $1 for sure. But we made it work and it was so fun, like very relaxing. And I spent like New Year's there. So just super fun. Like everybody was there partying it up and all of that, going to the beach, also getting to like explore the culture a little bit more. And then I went to Togo as well. So when I was in Ghana, it's a country right next to Ghana. So we went there for like, I think it was like 3 days or something, but it was super cool too, because like it was French speaking. So Ghana is English with all the languages that they have, but you cross the border and it's completely French. But then there's like a tribe that is the same, so they could speak the same language if they're like really close to the border. So it's just cool to see like the culture, like how beautiful, how many languages are represented and how you can connect with other people, even if they're not from the same country, but they're from the same tribe. So I went there. And yeah, so those are like the major, I think, countries outside of the United States I've been to. But then also just like, I went to Texas last year to go visit my best friend. So that was super fun. And then I went to Napa like 2 weeks before the pandemic, before everything shut down. So that was cool. I went with some good friends from college as well. So just been able to kind of travel around and see the world. So I want to keep doing that.
Crown Ellen, Bay Area, a proud sponsor of the Banquet Hall podcast. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, seeing the world is definitely the mission. Just hearing you speak about everywhere you travel makes me want to get some more stamps on my passport. I got my passport for I got my first passport in 2019. Went to Paris 3 months before the pandemic.
How was that for you? Like Paris in general, like would you recommend?
Oh, absolutely. I think I have a unique Paris experience just because I took French in high school, and I feel like going to Paris has always been something that was on my bucket list. Just like having taken French in high school, especially because I think stereotypically or traditionally, a lot of people just take Spanish in high school, especially in like Southern California. And so when I decided to take French, people were like, "Oh, like that's not practical. What are you going to do with that?" It's like I just want to learn French. Like, why not? Why not? Like, what's wrong with choosing a different language to learn? Like, we have the class. But yeah, Paris was an amazing experience. I took 3 years of French in high school. I was surprised how much French I was able to retain too. Like I definitely did a little Duolingo brush up before we went, but just going to Paris, speaking French to the locals, a lot of them thought I was like French or lived in Paris, so that was really cool. Like I was like, oh, like I really got my little accents and just
And
I'm speaking the language how it should be. But Paris is beautiful. I think some of the things that I appreciate the most, one, just being around architecture and buildings that have been around for hundreds of years. I think it really frames just how young we are as a country here in America and just how young a lot of these buildings are. Like just going to like Notre Dame and seeing like obviously it was after like the fires and whatnot, so it was under renovation, but seeing those old buildings, seeing things that we talked about in French class, walking along the Champs-Elysees. We also went in December, so it was a holiday season, and there were lights everywhere, and the Christmas markets were out. We were drinking vin chaud, which is hot wine for those who don't speak French. Phenomenal. Like I never really thought of like hot wine, but they had it like in the colanders, and they would just give you a cup. And in Paris, you can walk around and drink alcohol in the street. So we're just walking along the Christmas market, drinking hot wine. Tried chestnuts roasting on an open fire for the first time ever, which is actually like little known fact. It's actually disgusting. Like,
oh, really? Yeah, I was like, how was that?
like I feel like, especially like folks who celebrate Christmas, like you hear the Christmas songs like, oh, chestnuts roasted on open fire. So when we pass by chestnuts roasting on open fire, like, oh, we have to try it. It was
Yeah.
so nasty. Like it just didn't hit how I wanted it to. But yeah, Paris was amazing. Got to see the Palace of Versailles. I got to go on the Eiffel Tower. Just an amazing experience. We were only there for 5 days, but man, did I make the most of those 5 days. Like
A lot in 5 days. Wow. It's because I was like, oh, you're there for a couple of weeks based on all the things you did.
no, literally 5 days. And I'm the type of traveler who I do the research beforehand. I know what like the main places I want to hit. So I literally have a Google map of Paris with just labels of, okay, these are the tourist sites, these are the restaurants I want to check out, these are the art pieces I want to check out. And so I separated the map based off a day. So all right, this day we're gonna start at the Saint Chapelle. We're gonna go to the Musée d'Orsay. Then we're gonna go to the Eiffel Tower. Those are the three things that day. Whatever else we accomplished, cool. And we made it a mission. Like we got to the Louvre like right when it opened. Spent like 4 or 5 hours in the Louvre. Then went to another museum. Spent 3 or 4 hours. And then in the evening time, I did a dinner cruise on the river. Like just really trying to make the most of the experience. So I love Paris. Also, way more Black people than I
I was
expected.
gonna ask you. Yeah, I was like, is there a lot of Black people there? Because that's what I hear. In Paris, at least some parts of France, like there's hella Black people, but
Yeah, a lot of Nigerian folks, but also just a lot of like Black French people were there. It was like I told people when I first got back, I felt less like I feel like when you live in like Southern California, city like San Diego, like it's easy to really feel Black, like people looking at you because you're Black. But when I was in Paris, I didn't really feel that Black. Like it just felt like, yeah, I'm just a Black person here, which was cool. And then the last thing I'll say about Paris is that I feel like the notion that the French are like super rude is not true. Obviously, like there's rude people everywhere, like there's rude Americans, like everybody's rude.
yeah.
But what at least my hypothesis of it is if you're a loud, obnoxious American and you're just like no type of respect for the culture, and because the Europeans, the French, they're really laid back, like they take a couple hours off in the middle of the day and just like people watch at the cafe, and it's really quiet there. Like if you're American, you're like just yelling and just being loud, walking the streets, like, yeah, people are gonna be rude because like you're being annoying. Like I would probably be rude to you too.
Yeah, no
But
one
like yeah, exactly. But they were really nice, like at the Christmas markets, just talking to people and like trying, like when you try to speak the language and try to respect the culture, like people were giving discounts just because we were American. It was really nice. I really enjoyed my time and can't wait to go back, honestly.
That's awesome. So now I know if I ever want to go to Paris, I'm gonna hit you up for that map
Oh
because
yeah, I have the link.
so I don't have to do any work. No, I'm just kidding. But I will hit you up though for the map because
Oh no, absolutely. Why reinvent the wheel? And I think sharing travel stories is so impactful because I think obviously people know, oh, I'm gonna go to Paris, I'm gonna see the Eiffel Tower. But
right.
for someone who took like 3 years of French and had a really amazing French teacher in high school, we really dove really deep into the culture, etiquette in French, like even in France, like even just how like one thing about eating in Paris, if you finish your plate of food, they think that they didn't do like a satisfactory job for you because you weren't satisfied, like you're still hungry at the end, you ate everything on your plate. So it can be kind of rude to finish everything on your plate. They don't do like to-go bags or doggy bags or anything, because same thing, like you're supposed to sit here for this experience, you're supposed to set out this amount of time for this. So just having all that background, and then also being able to do so much research on different places to go, there's a lot of stuff on that map where it's like, yeah, you probably, if you look on the top 10 things to do in Paris, you're probably not going to see some of this, but it was a really cool experience. So yeah, for you or any listeners who plan on going to Paris, hit me up for that map. Might charge the listeners, but Irene, you can get it for free.
Seriously, that's really cool. I also took French actually in high school, 3 years as well. So, and like what you said, I mean, I haven't been to France, so,
Yeah.
but we did learn about like the culture, like all the different parts of France. And I was like, if I ever go, like, I'd love to just go and experience that, because I think a lot of the times we think of France, we're like Eiffel Tower, and then okay, but then after that, what do you do? And like get a baguette. Like, okay, but what else? Like, there's so many things to do. So I think that French, honestly, I loved it. And also my family too, like they speak French too, on like we're in Congo. So now if I communicate with them, I usually try to communicate in my broken French. Like it's not fluent at all, but it's something to get me by. And I do agree with you. I feel like the language does kind of come out when you're forced in those situations. Because even when I went to Togo, it's a French speaking country. So me and like my 3 other friends, they're Ghanaian, but they were taking French classes or whatnot. So together we were fluent in French. So I was like, I got y'all. So we're like leading the other study abroad kids who, they didn't know any French, or they made it to Spanish or whatnot. So it was helpful in those circumstances. So I feel like there's always a use for it. I think, we do knock the other languages, and Spanish is super valuable. Like I do want to know more, especially like going into healthcare and working in this area, or if I go back to San Diego, there's a lot of Spanish speakers. But it's also nice to know that I have another language in my, my toolkit if I ever need to use it. So,
So listeners, for the rest of this podcast, nous pouvons parler en français. So go ahead and get that translation app out. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But one more hobby that I wanted to talk about, or a passion of yours, is skin and hair care. Just seeing you glow up when you even bringing up skin and hair care. So what makes you so interested in taking care of your skin and developing like your own products for skin and hair?
Yeah. Okay. So in college, I had horrible skin. Like I was breaking out. And I feel like a lot of us, we went through skin problems. It might not be acne, maybe it's discoloration, whatnot. So I don't know what was going on with my face for the first 2 years. It was really bad. And honestly, it really did impact my self-esteem. So I was using all the wrong products, and everything that I kind of learned that I tried to change that up. And I think like, college is stressful. I think it was just like the access of food that we had was not good for our skin or our bodies. And then also just staying up, not getting sleep, not exercising, like all the bad habits, I think kind of just like, exacerbated my skin issues. So when I was in college, I actually started using shea butter in college. One of my friends put me on, and also put me on to African black soap too. And at first I used it and I was like, this is so drying for my face. Like I cannot. But then I was like, I'm desperate. I don't care if it's drying. I just got to moisturize well. So I started using that, and actually helped a lot, especially with like my skin discoloration that I had. So then shea butter, I know like in like the BRC, we had some events. Sometimes we would like make, I think somebody was interested in like making kind of like a body butter. So that was like some of the exposure that I got there. And then also in Ghana, like shea butter is easily accessible and everybody's glowing. So I was like, I need to get onto shea butter, So I feel like sometimes they tell us like, just American media, they're like, oh, don't use that because it's not Western, And I was like, well, it works for other people, so it could work for me too. So I think it's just a balance of like figure out your skin. So I got into shea butter, like kind of through that exposure. And it really did help my skin. Like now it's much better. But I had like another like skin issue during the pandemic because of maskne and stuff. And I was going through it. So that's when I was like, I need to make my own things because I don't trust all these things. So I started making whipped shea butter, and I just did a lot of research on like good oils and herbs to put inside, things that can just help your skin, support it, heal your skin. So I use my whipped shea butter. I was actually selling it. This is another thing I've kind of stopped, which is so sad, but I will get back to it. And I don't have an official name for it yet, but it's going to be Ren something. So, but yeah, so during like the pandemic time, like I just started like working with different formulas and all of that. I started making shea butter, and then I would just sell it to people. So literally people from all walks of life were buying it. People I haven't talked to in years were like, "Oh, I'm interested in your shea butter," and it was so cool to like see the support. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can make so much money from this," because it's very time consuming. Because I want to make sure like it's a quality product, and I don't want to just do it and just give it to people.
Right.
And and even the pricing at first I was like a little nervous because I had like a 2-ounce bottle, like a 4-ounce, and the 2 ounces I think was like $10, and then the 4-ounce was like 15, and I was like, oh, this is too much. But then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I could have just upped the prices because I'm using my own money and I'm using my own time and energy to make this stuff, and these are really good products for your skin and your hair. So I want to make sure I'm being also compensated for my time. So I really started doing that, and I had a good run for like almost a year, and then I stopped obviously when I came to grad school. But I do still make it. I don't sell it anymore. At least not now, like not currently. But I do make it for like my family and also for myself, and I give it as like little gifts here and there too. So I got into it just because, I just wanted to elevate myself and really kind of heal my skin. And it's been super helpful, especially for my face, my body, my hair too. And I just love shea butter. I love how it smells. I love how it feels. And it just reminds me too of when I was in Ghana, just like it like melts onto your skin and I smell so good. I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, so I hope to go back into it and start selling it. And, I had positive reviews. So I just want to keep making an impact. But yeah, but it just stopped right now. But it's not stopping forever.
Yeah, it's just a right now thing. And I'll just add that to the list of manifestations that we're going to get that back going. I know that my granny is the person who put me on to shea butter. Like ever since I was young, I remember she'd always tell me to like put shea butter on and like just it's good for skin. So I've been probably not consistently, of course, but as early as I can remember, like shea butter has been on my skin. And she does listen to this podcast, so I'm going to let you know right now. There will probably be a comment on YouTube asking where she can buy it. So you might you might be starting back sooner than you anticipate.
Right. I was like, I need to make sure she gets it. Okay. Especially if she's asking for it. I got to please the customers. So
Absolutely. But I want to go ahead and transition and talk about the main thing that brought us here today, the main course, if you will, of the banquet hall. RenRenSpeaks. So you are the first blogger to make an appearance on the Banquet Hall podcast. RenRenSpeaks. You had your first post December 30th, 2020. So almost 3 years now you've been an official blogger. So why don't we just start with why did you start blogging? Like why blogging?
yeah. Okay. So I've always loved to write. Like you asked my family, like I was in first grade, second grade, writing like books, like little books and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know like how your school was in elementary, but I remember like we would have like different reading shelves, and then they would have like a sticker of like the reading level that it was. So I would write books and I would illustrate it. I had a little friend who would like help me like illustrate and stuff. And then we'd write like author, our names, illustrator, our names. And then we would put like a little circle and try to match the reading level too, even though like, I don't know if it's the same. But from then, like I always loved writing, and I had a journal. So I would journal all the time when I was like 5th grade, 6th grade. And I would even write stories. So I had like a whole booklet of just different types of stories. So I was just inspired by like all the creative outlets that I've just kind of seen and make it my own. Like I wrote about this girl from like the future 5000 or whatever the heck. And she was a hologram and like met a friend and she went back in time. So I'm trying to find that so I could like just, I don't know, type it up and have it as like a memory or something. So I've always loved writing. So I feel like with this blog, I felt like I had a lot of things to say. I just didn't know like the outlet of what I wanted to do. And I actually think I started a Twitter thread like way back. I was like, y'all, like, do you think that I should do a blog or a podcast? And I think podcast actually won, but I was like, I'm gonna do a blog because I don't know the equipment, I don't have a microphone. I'm not really a big tech person. So a blog though, I know that I am a good writer and I can write. So that's I started the blog really just to kind of like have an archive of just like my life's reflections, my thoughts, like just everything that's going on in my life and record that. And it just helps send good vibes. Like I feel like a pretty positive person and I try to like send good vibes and stuff, but I really wanted to like reflect on my grad school career and journey. So I think a lot of my blog is kind of my woes and also just like my triumphs in grad school. But I also have some pieces, like the different series that we'll get into, a piece about me being Congolese American. What does that look like? Even, being debt free, which I was at the time, but now I'm not. So, but I even have a piece about that. So just all the things that I've been through and just kind of giving like words of wisdom and encouragement. So I started it. Yeah, I wanted to start it 2021. But then it was like 2 days before the end of the year. I was like, let me just go for it. I what am I waiting for? So shout out to WordPress because that's what I have my blog under. And I have a personal plan right now, but I hope to upgrade it to a business plan once I have more money so I can really make it my own in terms of like the format and the templates and stuff. But it's been really fun. And I did fall off a little bit, but I'm trying to get back into it now. So I feel like I've been doing good, like posting frequently enough that, the blog still exists. And branching out onto even like having it on Instagram. But that's kind of like the reason why I started it, because I like to write and I just want to kind of give a voice to other people and also like elevate different stories through my blog.
Yeah, elevating stories. I think that's the mission. Just storytelling is such a powerful tool, and in preparing for this podcast and reading through some of your blog posts, and obviously like having read some of them prior, I think your talent as a writer definitely stands out. Like I feel like I'm there with you in the moment. Like I feel like there's some blogs that I've read just over time, like literally back even to like Tumblr days where people were like blogging on Tumblr and whatnot.
Love
Um,
something.
but I think that some people, when they think of blog, they just start writing and not really having like a clear end goal or a clear story to tell, or the writing may be inconsistent. But I really feel like with your blogs, like I'm there for you in the moment. And I will say I could see it being a podcast. Like I definitely think that podcasting is something that you would be very talented in, just because the way that you tell stories in blog form, like I'm there with you. Like I feel like I'm in that moment. And I feel like we're around a campfire or something and you're just like telling us a story. So definitely appreciate the blogs. I also had a question about just how'd you come up with the name RenRenSpeaks?
Yes. So shout out to my sister Congo. She told me to shout you or to shout her out. So I am doing it right now. But so my name is Irene, but also at home they call me Irene. So that's like the name that I go by, like in just different spaces. So for short, she was like, "Oh, Ren, like how are you doing?" And she would call me that. And I was like, Ren's kind of a cute, catchy name. So I like changed it on Twitter, like my handle and stuff at one point, and then I was like, ooh, like for my blog, I can kind of do like a word play. So I was like, what am I gonna call it? Because it's a blog and I'm going to speak to people, but I wanted it to be catchy enough, but also like represent who I am. So I was like Ren, so have that, and then speaks because I am speaking through, written form. So I put those together, Ren Speaks, and I was like, this is like the coolest idea I've ever had in my life. So shout out to Kogo for Ren's, and then the speaks part I put together. So that's kind of how I came up with the name. So now I feel like I need to kind of brand with other things that I do Ren's, because it's all like tied back to me. I don't know what it'd be yet with my photography. I was trying to like figure out that, or just like my shea butter and stuff, but my blog name, very happy with it. So I don't think it's gonna go anywhere, the name.
Yeah, I love it. And I also really appreciate that it's Ren Speaks, not Ren Writes, because
Yes.
I think that just even you saying like you're speaking in a written form, I think that's something that could potentially go over people's heads, because it's like when people think of writing, they associate with reading and silence usually. But with a blog, you really have a voice, you have an audience in mind, you're talking to us. So I definitely think that is a fantastic name for your blog.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and my listeners, or not listeners, but my readers, or people who just hear it through written form, they're called Ren speakers. So
Ren speakers.
Mhm.
What have you learned about yourself through blogging?
Mhm. I know, I feel like it's just been such a nice reflective form. I've learned a lot, I feel like I've learned that I actually can impact people. And I feel like not even to toot my own horn, honestly, but like people have told me that. They're like, oh my gosh, like you're such an inspiration. You're this, you're this, you're this. And I'm like, yeah, like whatever. But like it's harder to believe it for yourself. So just I think as we're naturally hard on ourselves and we're our biggest critics. But I feel like through my blog, I've learned that I can inspire one person. So even with like some of the posts, like when I was debt free at one point, like I had some comment. It was such a nice comment. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. I don't even know who you are. Or when I talked about being Congolese American, somebody messaged me who I think they were Ghanaian American too. So like they talked about their similar struggles and not fitting into either culture. And it just felt so affirming that I'm not the only one experiencing this dichotomy of like, who am I kind of thing, but like somebody else can experience it and I might not even know who they are, but I'm able to like inspire somebody with my words that I'm speaking to them. So I just feel like I have learned about myself that I do have a voice, that I am powerful, and that I really can make an impact, even if it's two people reading my blog. Like it
Mm.
doesn't matter. For me, I'm not really about the numbers. I'm just like the quality of my writing. I want it to get out there and I really want somebody to just read it and resonate with it. And we can have a dialogue with that, in different forms. So it's been really cool to kind of see it like flourish. And actually, I have looked back to, my blog, like from when I first started grad school to now. And I'm like, wow, I cannot believe like the growth that I've done. And I know I'm not done growing. Like there's still a lot that I have to do to, better myself and stuff. But I am proud of like all of the work that I have put in to my blog because it's also a reflection on my life reflections. And that's what I put like in my motto in my blog. So
Yeah, I think that's so wonderful. We alluded to it a little bit earlier. You have a mini series that you did through your blog called Black is Beautiful. Highly encourage listeners to go to RenRenSpeaks.com and check out all of the reflections, of course, but definitely the Black is Beautiful mini series. Two of the people that you had in that series have been guests on the Banquet Hall, Victoria, as well as the hyphy doc himself, Cameron. Cambria is going to be a future guest of the pod. We gonna figure that out. So it's just cool seeing you highlight like some of the same people that I've been able to highlight on the podcast. But why don't you talk a little bit about what was the inspiration behind the Black is Beautiful miniseries and just what that meant for you to do?
yeah, so I think it was like, so I've done it 2 years in a row. So, it'll be coming next year or whatnot. But the first time I did it, I was just thinking about Black History Month. And I was like, what am I going to do for Black History Month? Like at this time, I was kind of running out of ideas for my blog. I was like, oh, okay. Like I know I'm going through midterms. I don't think people really care I'm going through midterms. So I was like, how can I kind of spin this in a way that is still holistic of who I am? Because I'm not just a grad student. Like I have other interests and other intersections of identities that I want to kind of highlight. So I thought about like how to be creative for Black History Month. And at first I just wanted to talk about myself and how I am as like a Black person, like in healthcare or whatnot. But then I was like, actually, I think I'm gonna elevate like different people who I really resonate with, who inspire me. And I just want to highlight their stories because I think Ren Speaks is a cool platform to it's not only for me, but other people can speak to others through the words that I write about them. So I started the first series was just people who honestly from all walks of life I've met, like college, when I like people I've known when I was really, really young. People I've met, kind of starting off for like grad school, mentors, things like that. And it was just super cool to interview some of the people that you even mentioned as well, because they're all so inspiring to me. And I'm just like, wow, like I would have never even known who you were if I didn't go to UCSC, for example, or if, my parents weren't friends with their parents kind of thing. So I really just wanted to use this as a platform to elevate Black voices because, we are silenced all the time and people don't take us seriously. And it's like we're so beautiful and like
Mhm.
we're so diverse and there's so much that we are that I think the media and just society tells us that we're only this, but we're creatives, we are healthcare workers, we're out here writing novels, writing books, like producing content that is just so powerful. So I just really wanted to highlight those voices, like in my, my blog, but like in Black is Beautiful, because it is beautiful, and beauty looks like a lot of different things for different people. So it was really cool because it challenged me every week to be consistent with my blog. So every week I was interviewing somebody different. And we did kind of like an email interview. So I would send them questions and they would respond. And I would just ask them a little bit more if there's any follow-up needed. But it was a way for me to like connect with people I haven't connected with in a really long time. But I'm like, I see you on social media, like you're making a difference and I appreciate you. And I want people to know who you are. So through that, like, it just felt it made my heart warm, like all these stories that I was able to read and like the journeys that they've been through. Cause I'm like, dang, like you're just a phenomenal person. And like,
Yeah.
I remember you were struggling at this point and look at you now. So that was like the first part. And then the second time I did it was healthcare workers. Cause I'm in healthcare. So, but I was like, I want to talk about other healthcare workers too. And, I went to school with some amazing Black healthcare workers who are currently in school, graduated, or who are in the field. So it was super cool to, interview both Cams, and then Vicky and like some other students. Like I even interviewed one of my fave OTs, like, and she is like a social media influencer. And again, like I've never met her in person, but she was so willing to like be part of my blog. And it's just cool because I've had that connection now with her, and just to kind of see her story and how she became an OT. And she's a Black OT out here like making an active difference. I was like, these are the stories I want to highlight and elevate, because we are so many things. And that's, again, just emphasizes and exemplifies that Black is beautiful, because we can be this, and this, and we can have our cool interests, our quirks, and all of that, and it still makes us who we are today. So that's like the inspiration behind the series. So I don't know like how I'll theme it for next year, and y'all will find out, so you better subscribe. But it's been really fun, and it just was like one of my favorite series that I ever did on the blog. So
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah, I love that. And we were talking before we started recording, just about kind of the synergy between why you had that Black is Beautiful miniseries, as well as kind of the Banquet Hall podcast, and some of the impetus behind getting this podcast launched. I think this is like interview number 29, and 26 of the 29 have been Black folks, just really highlighting just our stories, because we have to tell our own stories, but we also have to amplify each other's stories. And I love what you said about like seeing what your friends and people that you care about have gone through. I think that one of the main things that I've talked both online and offline with my guests about is that, like, yeah, this is my way of just kind of letting my friends know, like, yeah, I see you. Like, I remember those days when we were in Sixth College at the residence halls, and it was like, yeah, like, I don't think I could do this, or I don't know if I'll be able to do this. And now you did. And now it's like, yeah, let's tell that story, because one of the, at least right now, the kind of tagline for the Banquet Hall is telling tomorrow's stories today. Because yeah, 20 years from now, when Dr. Cambria Anderson is like at her dental office and doing her thing, it's like, nah, like we can start telling that story today. Like,
right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly, like, I feel like, your podcast and then my blog, we have like that synergy, similar kind of outlooks on just elevating those stories that I feel like, maybe they're not being elevated as much or appreciated, because we all went through our own unique challenges. But I feel like being able to reflect through that, and then kind of see how we've grown and how we can continue to grow, and then inspire people going through very similar challenges. So hopefully, like, when I did like the healthcare edition, so if there's any Black people in public health who are interested in pursuing public health, now they have a connection, because Vicky's out here doing the thing, and she is able to just inspire other people, or the other people I've just interviewed, like y'all can connect. And if you have those similar interests or experiences, then that's how you just kind of build your community from that too. So yeah, just trying to build community out here, so.
yeah, absolutely. And final question about the blog is just, where can people find it and how can people support it?
Yes. Okay. So RenRenSpeaks.com is what the website is called. And then you can find it on my Instagram. So there's an actual RenRenSpeaks Instagram. So just write that. Or if you're already friends with me on Instagram, like you can click on it's in my bio. So it's on the ad, so it's right there. And then just supporting it by subscribing. So click on, the link, and then it'll take you to the website. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a place that's asks if you want to become a RenRen speaker, and then put your email, click on it, and then you're subscribed. So if you're subscribed, then you'll get the notifications when I do post. So yeah, and just share it too, like whenever I post, and if it resonates with you, you can share it on your social media, or you could just send the link to somebody, be like, you should read this. So yeah, just support me. I have, I think, 72 followers on Instagram, so 100 would be nice just to make triple digits. But it's okay. It's not all about the numbers, but that exposure is nice too. So that's how you can support me.
Hey, I'm action oriented. We're going to get you to 100 followers. So I think right now the Banquet Hall has like 49 subscribers on YouTube and maybe like 45 followers on Spotify. So I'm asking 28 of y'all to right now pause the podcast, or I mean, you can multitask if you want. But go on IG at RenRenSpeaks, hit that follow button, check out the blog, and we're gonna get you to 100 as soon as this episode drops. That's my goal.
Amen. Yes. Okay. Triple digits. All right.
Rounding out the podcast, just got a couple of quick hitters that whatever first comes to mind for you. First of all, who are some people who inspire or influence you?
I feel like I'm inspired by so many people, but I'm gonna shout out my family, honestly, especially my parents. Like, their migration stories are so unique, so crazy, especially my dad's. And I'm like, you're such an amazing man. So I'm gonna shout them out because they really do inspire me to be who I am today. And they continue to just support me. So I am super appreciative of them. And then also just like all the people I've met, like in my walks of life, like so from childhood, especially UCSC, like I met so many amazing individuals. Like I feel like if anything, UCSC was a great networking opportunity because like I'm still talking to you today, and it's been, I don't even know how many years since I last saw you. So it's been super cool that we've been able to like reconnect on this podcast. So I'm just inspired by the people who motivate me to be who I am today. And also just the people who are doing creative things and they're doing what makes them happy, what they love, being so carefree. And yeah, just inspired by like people in my grad program too, who are like actually, passionate about OT, like making a difference that like align with kind of what I want to do as an OT as well. So yeah, so those are some of my inspirations, just the people in my community and my friends, the different spaces that I navigate and that I move through.
Absolutely. Next up is our shameless plug and manifestation corner. I already wrote down two things we're manifesting, and that's the return of the shea butter and the return of the photography. But is there anything else you want to shamelessly plug or manifest on this podcast?
I'm manifesting I'll be a doctor June 2024 because I am tired. It's been a long time coming, but I am manifesting that I will graduate, I will be successful, I will pass my exam when the time gets there. I have 10 more months of school left, so I'm very excited about that. And it's crazy to say that because I feel like I've been talking about getting into school forever. So I'm manifesting that I'm gonna, make an impact, and I'm really going to, use my career to be a light to other people. So yeah, that's my manifestation. Shameless plugs. I'm not really doing anything too crazy, but follow me again on RenRenSpeaks or my personal Instagram, or you could Venmo me money for paying my debt. So
Hey, debt is important to take care of. Y'all can Venmo either of us if you want to.
right.
And then last but not least, takeaways from this episode. I would like you to say things that you're taking away from this episode, as well as what you hope our listeners are taking away.
It's a good question. I think what I'm taking away from this episode is, just to continue to be like an inspiration and to really listen to the words that I just said, like for an hour, because I feel like it's easy for me to be like, you got this, you can do this, I can do this. But then I know that I still struggle to this day with actually like taking my own advice and implementing it, because it's easier said than done. So I think that for me, like, I really want to be able to implement this. And also for the listeners too, like, really follow your dreams, like do what you want to do, and don't like have anybody limit you to a box. Like if you want to do this while doing this, like go for it, because it is really hard to just like be passionate about the things that, you know, you were once passionate about. If you're going through a specific chapter of life, that's really hard. Which, you know, grad school is the chapter of my life that's hard for me right now. But like just again, just continue to motivate and like just be intentional with all of that I do. But like really listen to like the words on my blog that I'm saying, that I'm trying to speak to people. I think I want listeners to take that away, like do that. And also for me, I need to do that as well. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. Well, Irene, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. This has been a blast. And I know that our listeners are going to take away so much from your story and the stories that you will continue to tell. Listeners, thank y'all for sticking with us for this episode. Make sure y'all check out RenRenSpeaks on Instagram, on the website, RenRenSpeaks.com. Make sure you follow the Banquet Hall podcast on IG at Banquet Hall Pod. Make sure you subscribe, like, do all the things that you know that we're going to ask you to do. I feel like we just live in an age where, like, yes, every YouTube video ends with the plug to subscribe and like. If y'all could just do it, please. Thank you. And all that. But Irene, any last words before we close out the episode?
Thank you, honestly, just for interviewing me. This was so fun. It was very refreshing. It was a good study break, I will say. But I do feel like re-inspired, honestly. Like I feel like, you know, especially being in grad school for such a while where like I'm constantly on go, go, go. I think for some time I kind of lost sight of like, what am I doing, you know? Like what kind of OT I want to be. But I feel like just kind of retelling my story and also just like the things that I've been doing up until this point, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm actually kind of iconic. So
Yeah.
so you know what, I can do this, you know. So it's been like a nice way to re-inspire me too. So thank you for this, because I think sometimes it's nice to just like talk it out with somebody.
Hey, affirmation received. You were definitely iconic, and very much looking forward to people seeing just what icon you are. Looking forward to the blog post when you talk about this episode of the Banquet Hall as well.
It is coming. I was gonna ask you, like, I mean, I was gonna go for it, but let's just ask just in case. So.
Oh no, absolutely go for it. Thank you once again, and we'll catch y'all next episode.
Thank you. Bye.